one thing that is probably maybe unique, well, I think likely unique to me as a writer is I do almost all my writing in Excel, believe it or not.
Really?
The final stuff is in Final Cut, but I mean, I've spent so much time in spreadsheets my whole life that like I think that way. So when I'm mapping out and doing a lot of outlining, which has become a big part of my writing, it's just enormous amount of outlining and re-outlining and stuff like that. It's all done in Excel tabs, and it's just this whole giant file before I even started really writing. So that probably wouldn't have come to me if I was just coming in through an MFA program, for example.
Right. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you gotten to the point where you're writing any like formulas or macros that like just like I'm gonna put a bunch of ideas here and it's gonna format this story for me? Dave, corporate finance director by day, writer, director, filmmaker by nights and weekends and probably vacation days. How the hell do you balance those two things?
Well, I mean, if you don't sleep, it helps. You know, if you give up sleeping, it's easy. 'Cause I generally write in the morning, like 5 or 5:30 in the morning. I'm trying to be writing. I'll write for like an hour and a half before my work day starts, and then I'll just go and work on the corporate finance for 10 or 12 hours, depending on the day, and then usually kind of worn out by then. But you know, the weekends, I'm usually Saturday and Sunday mornings, I'm writing until noon or early afternoon, and then I'm on to the rest of the day and my family. I kind of like to see my family once in a while too. Some of them people actually appreciate that, some of them don't. It helps me to like totally cash out my finance work in the mornings, and then especially on weekends, and I'm not thinking about balance sheets and valuations and crap like that. I'm thinking about characters and arcs and all like that, and vice versa too. I mean, it helps to like go back into that stuff during the week and cash out the writing and come back to it too. So it's never really gotten in the way of my corporate, I think, life. It's always been good. I think I've done better at my job than the times I've been really writing and working on stuff. It's something I can't imagine not doing both, to be honest with you.
Yeah, well, I mean, arguably they support each other, right? Because if you were just doing the corporate thing, you'd be a frustrated creative, right? And if you're a frustrated creative, you wouldn't be able to pay your mortgage.
Yep,
right?
that's true.
So you found kind of that tangible or that way to combine them both. But like conceptually, in the Venn diagram with both of them, there's a middle section. Do you find that they influence each other in any positive ways?
It's interesting you say that, because I don't know if you saw all the episodes of Incompleteness or not, but it definitely got in that script, because Clarence's character, you see him in about montage. He's doing exactly what I'm talking about. He's creating formulas for an arc of his story through all these elaborate macros he's built within a spreadsheet. And I haven't gone that far yet. Maybe someday I'll get there. But that's how his brain works, and that's how I thought that could get across best in that story, right?
I mean, they used to write it on tablets, right? With a chisel. So I think we can handle a cell in a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Growing up, did you always know you're going to be kind of in the arts and writing, directing, or were you much more mathematical, on the finance side? Like, tell us about the kind of confluence and the weaving and how you've developed over the years.
Short answer is I never thought I'd be making films or writing films at all, until I started 20 or something years ago. I think the biggest influence I grew up, my dad was really into old movies and like Hitchcock movies especially. So we really kind of bonded over that. So it kind of became important to me that way, but then kind of seeped in through my whatever to get that general movie language down from watching so many films growing up. And I didn't really realize that until I got into writing later, which then led to screenwriting, and then it was all kind of there from my previous growing up experience with watching a ton of films by dad.
Yeah. What was the impetus to start writing? Is that just like an itch that you needed to scratch? Or?
Well, goes back over 20 years now, but I was in undergrad at the University of Kentucky, and I had a friend of mine who started a very, very left-wing periodical that it was pretty high level. It was made at Kinko's, and they'd have about 17 copies went out, and readership of about 4 on a good week. But he asked me to write for them, and I thought, why not? And I gave it a shot. I really liked it. So I wrote a weekly column for 2 to 4 people every week for a while, and then I used those samples to then give it to the school newspaper in Kentucky, and they hired me to be a weekly columnist, and I did that for $6 a week, which I was overpaid by about $5, I think, by the quality of the work.
A couple of years.
Back then it was a 12-pack with tax. And then I took that to graduate school. I went right into graduate school when I got my MBA in finance, and I got an enormous raise to $15 a week doing that, which was huge money. So I wrote every week for the graduate school for University of Iowa. That was kind of a lot of my writing experience up until I was 21 and 22. Came up here then, dove right in the corporate world. Didn't think much of it again, but then I got kind of a little itchy to do it again. So I started doing like freelance magazine articles here for like Twin Cities Business Monthly and all that. That got boring in a real hurry. And then from there, I'm like, I've always liked movies, going back to the thing with my dad. And I took a screenwriting class at the Loft and kind of learned the basics of structure and all. You don't know this stuff, right? So from there, do what you do when you do that stuff. You enter in a contest and you get going. And my first full-length feature actually did surprisingly well in these screenwriting contests, right? So for one of them, they actually helped me get out to LA. They paid for a lot of it to go out there because I was one of the top, like 1% of the whatever.
Cool.
Like, okay, well, we want you to come out here and meet these people, the producers and all this at this screenwriting expo. This was like the mid-aughts, right? So I went out there. I'm like, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to write screenplays. I want to option them off. I want to get them, made in Hollywood. Well, they brought me to some big networking parties with a lot of Hollywood producers, and tried to introduce me to some producers to pitch my script to. And it became immediately apparent that no one was ever going to buy everything that I was ever going to write. Like within the first 2 or 3 meetings, I'm like, this is never going to work for me, right?
Yep.
So to answer your question, I'm getting there. So on the flight home from that experience, I'm like, I can't do this and just send off scripts to be doorstops for people in Los Angeles. I want to do this myself. I decided I was going to take every filmmaking class I could find at IFP, which became Film North. These people read.
Yep.
Took all those classes, and then in one of the classes, Intro to Video Production, we had to make a short film. I made a short film in the class with my classmates. We shot in about 2.5 hours. I was in it, and it got in a bunch of festivals, and it did pretty well. From there, a guy named Christopher Mick, who was the head of the facilities at Film North, said, hey, if you want to keep making short films, you can just use our equipment, right? So I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing.
And stuff was expensive back then.
Oh yeah. It was all, and he was like, literally, we would just use all of their equipment from their storage, whatever there, and make short film to short film. I made like 6 or 7 short films in 2 years.
Nice.
Average budget's probably $100. I think on screen they look like $150 films.
50% improvement?
50% improvement, yeah, but they're like $100 each. And then I did several of those, and I got kind of tired of doing short films, as you do. I'm sure you have too. So then I had a short film called Love a Documentary, which is a very dark and disturbing and sometimes funny mockumentary that I made, shooting most of it at IFP, that we just kept shooting until it was feature length, right? So that became my first like 1.5-hour feature length film. Cost about $1,000 to make. And then from there, I just kind of kept doing feature films, right? So I did a couple more. And then this is probably 6 or 7 years ago, my last feature film, Twin Cities, which I think you saw once.
Yep.
I decided that my kind of writing, my kind of stuff was probably never going to be commercially, you saw the film world's kind of moving away from that kind of material and into TV and away from feature films. So I kind of made that decision, in 2017 or so, to just go to try a TV series. So I spent 2 years just writing, not even thinking I would actually produce this. And then 2019, I submitted a lot of my stuff for this show that I have now, Incompleteness, to Minnesota Arts Board, and I won the Artist Initiative Grant.
Nice.
And the thing about winning that is it's not just a check, you have to actually make it.
That's actually the real prize, right? Because it forces you to do it,
right.
Because a lot of us are, hamstrung by doubt and life circumstances that we don't get around to it. So that maybe was a really good thing. I mean, you've proven that you've able to produce and get things done, but for a lot of mere mortals, it's probably a really good thing.
It was a great fire on my ass because I really thought I was just going to go back to just writing, I got this whole other life, obviously, in corporate finance. But then when I won that award, it's like, you have to make it to make the money. I'm like, then I start the whole process.
Yeah.
And we end up with, a 6-hour first season.
Yeah, we'll get into that shortly too. I want to unpack something that you said when you went to Hollywood and did the Horse and Pony show, and you knew pretty quickly that wasn't the place for you.
Right.
Like, tell us why, like, was it the smoke that they were blowing up your ass? Like,
So I had my feature film script was called You're the One, and it was about this like really depressed accountant, and he has this existential crisis, and it was a very interior, the kind of thing that A24 would buy now if it was a little better than it was. But back then it was like, the last thing anyone wanted. And I remember pitching several executives, and one in particular, I like give her this very, you're supposed to keep a pitch probably within less than a half an hour, I'm guessing is like the new norm. I just go on and on and on and on. And this whole thing, I'm really excited about it, and this depressed accountant and all this, existential bullshit I had in there. And she stops and she's like, no, give me the shot. This meets that. And I thought for a second, I just was already kind of crushed. And I said, it's the Passion of Christ meets Riverdance.
And she the record scratched.
She didn't laugh, and she was annoyed. I'm like, that was to answer your question. That was a moment where like, this group is probably not my shtick.
Yeah.
So that was it.
Yeah, I mean, they're just used to making what worked before.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they can get fired for saying yes or something that's outside the norm, Yeah, I've had similar experiences out there too. I opted out from that a while back. Tried for a while, and I was like, you might get employed or you might have a project that goes for a couple of years, but, will you be sane by the end of it,
Right, yeah.
I think living, outside the bubble is better creatively, because then you're not trying to make it for the system.
Yeah, and people here I found out pretty quickly that people, as you know, will work. There's so little narrative stuff made here that even the short films I was making and then the feature films, you're talking like great Guthrie actors, really, we have very talented theater actors here. They will all work for, I shouldn't say this, but close to nothing to be in a film. And under my budget, that kind of had to be the case. So
I mean, they have to like the writing, right? The writing has to be good. Like, they're not stupid.
Hopefully.
They'll
they had to say they like the writing anyway.
Yeah, or just
or just
they want
be
to
nice.
Kids happy to be on screen, or the red carpet thing for sure. I think that's right. I think there is a dearth of high quality projects around here. So when there's something that has the promise of one, it's a little easier to get people on board.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Incompleteness. So you gave us kind of the origin story. Did you, and this is like 6 hours of TV, right? So it's like,
exactly 6 hours, yeah.
Yeah, it's significant amount. Yeah. Did you go in knowing like, hey, I'm going to do a limited series, or I'm going to do a season and see where it goes? Like, how much of this did you have like planned out ahead of time?
Yeah, I mean, I was burned out enough from feature filmmaking after Twin Cities that I wanted to just like recollect my thoughts and just write and dig into different kinds of themes and all that kind of stuff. So it was an interesting experience, and I just wrote and wrote and wrote. I think I had 300 or 400 pages by the time I applied to the MSA-AB arts program. So I had just wanted to just write it all, at least in a full draft of it, and then see what happens. And then when I got the grant, it was just to do a pilot, but the pilot I'd written was like 70 or 80, 90 pages, right? So the pilot is most of what is in the first 3 episodes that we shot pre-COVID, right? So it was really shooting those 3 in pre-COVID, and then I was kind of going to be done, and then to take it from there. Just on those 3 episodes, we had applied to a bunch of festivals, and it just did shockingly well, right? So we ended up winning like, I think, over 50 festivals internationally, right? So then at that point, I'm like, we might have something here, because I thought it was a little too arcane for the broader audience, but I found out that it was much more broadly accepted than I was expecting. So then at that point, I'm like, I should say at that point, I had a couple executive producers got interested in it. They went out and tried to sell it as a broader series, just kind of put some feelers out. And I got a really good response, but their main thing was 2 things. It's not diverse enough, and it's not a pilot, and it's not a full series. It's only 3 episodes, right? So then that was really the impetus to do the other 5 episodes post-COVID. So we got a more diverse cast, which are amazing, a lot of amazing actors of color. And then we also had 5 more full 45-minute episodes.
Right.
So then that allowed us to be done with a full series of 6 hours of 8 45-minute episodes.
And then what was your thought process to go to episodic versus feature? Was that like a strategic thing? Because I personally think like right now, just kind of where the audiences are, features are kind of one and done, right? And it's hard to get them to come back to something else. So did that enter the thought process at all, or did you just want to have the palette or I guess the canvas to play around and have 6 hours of freedom?
Right. I'll say it was both. I mean, I absolutely loved being able to like move out of like the 90-minute structure of like, you've written scripts too. It's like you have to have every single line's got to be a beat, a plot. It's all plot, 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 plot. And you don't get a lot of character development because you're just trying to get everything through the 3 acts in 90 minutes, right?
Right.
I found it incredibly liberating. That's kind of why I think I just wrote for 2 years. Is like I want to like really dive into characters and themes and take it as far and as long as it takes me, right? So that was definitely part of it. I also, from trying to sell the 3 features, the last 2 got distribution, but it was, it's not a great distribution deal. I got a lot of overseas play, but not much here. You don't have a lot of hooks in the market by just putting a feature film out there. It's like, I think that's what you're getting at, right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, we'll buy it for a few bucks and then you got nothing else. But a series, like right now, we can get into this too. I'm writing season 2, we're trying to sell season 2. You've got an ongoing live thing to sell people, right?
Yep.
So it was both of those things.
Yep. And then let's talk about production a little bit too. 6 hours of filmed content, even though I hate that word.
Yeah.
That's a heavy lift.
Yeah.
How did you manage that as like the writer, director, producer? Obviously you hired well, and you probably had a rotating cast of people because you did it over time.
Right.
How long did it take to get everything in? Because you filmed and then you took a break.
Yep.
So what was that length?
It was not as long as you might think. I've worked with a lot of the same actors over time, especially like Bethany and Clarence, where as you know, with actors, you get a shorthand. So I was able to like work really quickly with some of these folks, all the crew I'd worked with before. So the first answer is like we were insanely efficient, right? We would shoot often 10, sometimes 15 pages in a day.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Within 6 or 7 hours.
It's very dialogue driven, right?
Yeah,
so if you and your actors are on point, that's the only way you can get that far.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we'd shoot, evenings and weekends when folks were available. A lot of folks almost everyone else has a job, outside of the arts or something else that keeps them going. So we're always working around schedules. We just found the time, and it was faster than you would think relative to like a normal production where you might do 4 or 5 pages a day. It was often at least 10 pages a day, right? So we just cranked it out. We got in a good groove, and we were just on a roll, and we just kept going with it. None of the actors knew the story at all, besides their sides for that scene, right?
So in some ways that's helpful, right? Yeah. Because if an actor knows your entire arc, they're going to prep for that entire arc.
Yeah.
If they're learning, along with the audience in one respect,
right,
then there's kind of less work for them to do, and they're maybe more present even. Yeah.
Yeah. No one was upset about it. I couldn't have given to them anyway, because I would usually had 2 or 3 weeks between shoots, or we might do 2 shoots in a row, but 2 or 3 weeks in between. So I'm writing every day between those shoots, and I'm giving it to them probably a week or 2 in advance of the shoot. So they're just like getting a script from me in the email, a week and a half before they go to shoot, and that's all they know is that side. They don't know anything else what's going to happen in the future for their character, much less the entire story, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think as a writer, it's a little bit of a blessing too, because you see your words being spoken, and you see the characters or the actors inhabiting the characters. That might influence what you write the next day or the next day.
Yeah.
With features, it's like, no, you're done, and you're filming. You can go in and adjust a little bit, but for the most part, what you have on the page is what's going to be filmed tomorrow.
Yep.
You got to move around a little bit with that.
Yeah.
Was that a big influence on what you did, or did it not really come into play a whole lot?
No, it was great because, especially since I had already edited, produced the first 3 episodes, the writing since then, I have a very clear picture of who the characters are, what they're going to sound like.
What Clarence sounds like when he's delivering those lines.
But in that character as well, because he's played other characters for me, right? So it's a really cool thing to be able to like write and be able to you do a lot of writing too, like visualize exactly how it's going to look because you've already seen that character. So that I thought was a great advantage for me, was I had, 2 hours already between of completed episodes before we started episodes 4 through 8 to fall back on and say, I know this is how this is going to look and sound because we've already done this character before, right?
Yep. And for the most part, you're probably repeating a lot of the same locations too.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's a lot easier to write that. I've gotten in trouble before on sets. Not in trouble, but like you'll write something and then you're filming, but you haven't scouted the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then the AD's like, you have any storyboards for this scene that we're shooting, next week? I'm like, we haven't found the location yet. Like, how can I write storyboards?
Exactly.
Like, I can give you all close-ups, that's about the gist of it. So Incompleteness is a pretty heady show, right? Do you feel like, and I know a lot of your work has kind of been an evolution and you've dealt with some of these themes. Do you feel like this is kind of just how your brain works and who you are? Or is it a reaction to maybe some of the current film, TV content that, we're consuming? Or maybe a combination of both?
Right.
Or tell me a little bit about like you wanting to go like that deep into things.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it doesn't feel like a reaction to like anything in TV or film that I was watching at the time I was writing. I'm still writing, I guess I should say. I think the real genesis of it was when I stepped back from feature filmmaking, I just wanted to just follow whatever fascinated me and dive as deep as I wanted to and just write as long as I wanted to, like I said. And that was kind of my whole MO at that time. And around this time, this is probably 7 or 8 years ago, I've always been kind of a science and tech kind of geek, a little bit like you, right? And one thing I fell down a deep rabbit hole on is the whole idea that we live in a deterministic universe, right? And, that's something that's, often deeply discussed in like TED Talks or podcasts, but there's not much out there in the realm of narrative.
Explain for us what determinism means.
Yeah, sorry, I should get there. Yeah, so basically it's the whole idea that, not to get super nerdy here, but like from the Big Bang until now and in the future, it's just this cascading of the laws of physics taking place, low entropy to high entropy, and that's really all that's going on. Within that, you've got things like human beings that are emergent properties of that. In other words, it's all just kind of particles interacting, and again, this is going to sound super nerdy, but within that, what you are left with, and this is where you see a lot of the discussions to this day, is what that means is we really have no free will, we have no self, that whole thing, and I started to get really fascinated with that because it's like that, not so much the inconvenient truth of that, but then also the implications of that, right? Because I happen to believe that because I don't know another way around it than that being the answer. I don't think any other answer can make sense, possibly, but I go back and forth. But when I was writing this, it definitely was in the full determinism camp. So I wanted to write about not just that in a narrative form, which is pretty rare, I think, to the depth that we go into in Incompleteness, but also the implications of that, right? So that was like what really excited me with the project, was like to try to bring that to a narrative form outside of TED Talks and podcasts and geeky white papers, and into the realm of like, this is where I thought it might have a very niche response versus the broader response I had, because it's not for everyone, but I wanted to do it in an entertaining enough way and an interesting enough narrative that you kind of smuggle that stuff in.
Totally.
Right? So that was genesis for the whole project, was that idea, and just see how far I can go with it. It's in this narrative structure.
Mm-hmm. So is it inevitable that you and I were going to be here?
Yeah, it is actually.
The audience who's going to be listening.
Let's get these questions.
Right.
Yeah. It is. I mean, fortunately or unfortunately. But honestly, to get to like the crux of it is like that. It always seems weird and bizarre and wacko when you talk about it, but at the same time, that is something that most physicists agree with at this point, right?
Yeah,
and,
right.
And, if you do or not, but I think even though that's well established by the people in the know, there's not enough, in my mind, around the true implications of that, right? Because you can look at it in a very positive way and say, well, because it's a deterministic universe, we don't have free will. If someone does something horrible, they really weren't in charge of that, so you can't hate them, right?
Right.
And that's where you usually go with it in terms of like, could be a positive worldview. Well, I want to take that too and say, well, if that's really true, you can't hate somebody. Well, really, actually, is there such thing as love as well, right?
Right.
So it's really about that most centrally, is like, if all this is true, how do you navigate yourself spiritually, emotionally through this as a human being? Can you still believe in love and everything else that goes with it? And that's what really drew me to the project, was to try to do that in a way that's digestible.
Well, I mean, the meta of it all is that when you watch a film or a TV series, it's already predetermined what it is.
Exactly.
But we have this ability to like find ourselves in those characters, even though we know it's predetermined. We don't give a shit.
Exactly.
We're there for the ride.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe that's the answer. As long as you can appreciate the ride.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah. And I know you've received a ton of great reviews and probably a lot of like interesting comments and dialogue around it. Has that been fun to watch? People kind of like learn from it.
Right.
Misinterpret it, interpret it correctly. Like, how has that been for you?
It's interesting because some folks will watch it and they'll talk to you about it, or they'll write a review or whatever else. They almost don't even touch on this determinism thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then other folks, we've got a bunch of reviews too, that were like, they're super focused on it, and they look at everything else as kind of background noise, the relationships to the characters. So it's almost like a Rorschach test, if I'm saying that right. Rorschach. Thank you. God, I never said that right. Test of like your own psyche when you watch it, is like, how do you really, are you willing to go down that rabbit hole with us or not? Or are you just going to like say, okay, that's a thing? Because that will also carry through with people. We talk about this outside the film. Some people say, okay, yeah, we had no free will. Okay, whatever. That's doesn't matter. I feel like I had free will. Right. Other folks will get super depressed or super excited about it. They'll have a huge reaction to it, and they want to talk about it for hours, right? So that's been interesting in and of itself.
I would imagine too, like if I kind of knew your ethos or your, intention with it, I'm going to view that completely differently going in blind.
Right.
I don't know which one's better,
right?
But in something like Incompleteness, I think that probably does matter a whole lot. So you could have twins, right? And you could do a blind study on this, and it'd be pretty fascinating. Oh, it gets meta really fast, and I don't think we want to go there, but
I mean, it was, as you've seen some of it too, it's all very meta and well in a way too, because I mean, just a really quick tangent on that, because the lead character Alex, who is making a film, right, and the film he's making is Twin Cities, the film I made, right? So the themes from that some of those are smuggled into him as he's writing this film. And Matt, I don't know if you saw the Q&A after the Twin Cities Film Fest screening, but Matt Bailey made this comment about how meta it was, because he's sitting there at the desk where I wrote the thing, playing a filmmaker, while on the ledge was a lot of the awards we had won, all the trophy.
Right.
But shooting a scene as a character, it's just got this
concentric circles, just all
a Russian doll cursive madness. So it gets there in a hurry.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then you're currently shopping it, right? Trying to find a home for it.
Yeah, I mean, actually, so where that's at, I had the two EPs that came on, like I said, after the first 3 episodes. They're still with me. One's in LA, one's in New York. They've kind of helped me put together a package and the pitch deck and everything else, and it has to go with it. October, we signed with a distributor, Virgil Films. They've been around for 20 years. They're amazing. They're actually in LA this week, meeting with several streamers to try to sell it. Yeah. So.
Yeah. All right. Yeah.
So I'll check my phone when we're done, see where it's at. But it's a live thing right now.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about the industry too, because clearly, I don't know how much you pay attention, but like, it's in flux, it's changing, and mostly not for the better right now. I mean, TV maybe is the one thing that's kind of doing a little bit better than at least on the film side.
Yep.
Do you think about this stuff as you're moving forward? Like, okay, where are the audiences at? Like, or how do you ROI? Like right now on the indie film side, I don't think I can go to investors with a straight face and say, I know how to make your money back.
Right.
Because those doors have been closed.
Yeah.
Right. But, on the series side, it feels like we have room to grow there yet.
Yeah.
And we talked about that a little bit earlier, but do you feel like that comes into your math as you're developing this stuff and working on what you're writing season 2? So obviously you do feel somewhat strongly about that.
I try not to let that influence what I'm doing as a writer. I mean, I think that for me, having done this for 20 years with another day job that feeds my family, it's given me a lot of freedom to just write whatever I want to. And the payback for me has always just been like, the fun of trying to write what I want to write. I've never really stepped back, probably to my detriment in some ways, and said, well, is this going to be commercial anyway or not? So I don't think, I kind of just hope that if it's interesting to me, it's going to be interesting to more nerds like me. And that's as far as I go with it.
Yeah. Did you hear the latest rumor that Netflix are asking their writers to have characters announce what they're doing on screen? Because everyone's on their phones.
Yeah,
right.
That's perfect. Yeah.
So it's like, okay, I'm gonna leave now and go fight the bad guy, right? Like,
I think Fellini was doing that for a while. Wasn't Fellini the early Fellini?
Yeah. No, I think Kurosawa started.
Kurosawa, you're right. I'm sorry, but then Kurosawa was first, but then Fellini followed.
You know, Mifune was all about the extraneous dialogue, just to let us know that, you know, I'm unsheathing my samurai sword.
I'm gonna do ill will at this point. Yeah, that's fucked up. Sorry, screwed up. I don't know if I can say fucked up.
Yeah, I know, and that would be not a world in which you or I could live in.
No, I mean,
very easily.
Yeah.
I know. Well, pardon my French, but in Hollywood they call it the golden dildo. You're getting paid, but you're getting fucked.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, I got to invest in one of those.
You do the things that you don't necessarily want to do because, you know, they're checks, cash.
Okay.
Yeah, I think rightfully people avoid those.
Okay. I'm going to Google golden dildo and see what comes up. When I get home.
I think it'll probably be something different, but I don't know.
All right. We'll see what comes up.
Send me some links. What's your? I know we touch on AI a little bit in the series, but what's your take on AI, both creatively as a society, but then in terms of like art and our arts? Do you have any strong opinions?
Yeah, mine's more. I mean, I really. So there is. This isn't really a spoiler when folks see it, but you see something. There's a character, Bethy's character in the first season, and she becomes enamored with and involved in a relationship with a text bot, right? And then the text bot, it seems at the end of season 1, wants her to hurt her husband, Alex, right? That really explodes that storyline in season 2. I'm writing it right now, that part of it, into a lot of stuff that's coming out now. So it kind of, you almost have to check the newspaper every day as you're writing this stuff. But I'm completely fascinated with that angle of it in terms of like a scene I'm writing right now is all about, the way AI is getting every day. It's becoming more and more seemingly conscious, right? And I'm really fascinated with, okay, there's like 2 camps in this, kind of like with free will, right? There's a camp that thinks it's never going to become conscious or sentient. It's always going to be just ones and zeros. And there's other camp where I'm coming in, I think now more than ever, is like, well, if you think about it, the way we're modeling these large language models and everything else that is the foundation for AI, recognizing patterns, a lot of networks of information, and there's a integrated information theory holds that if there's enough of that going on, the consciousness emerges from that, right? So what I'm kind of writing about now is like, there really isn't a huge difference between how these things are going right now with the large language models and how they're bringing together that and our own consciousness, that it could very easily emerge into a consciousness, as crazy as that sounds, right? Mm-hmm. So that's from a writing standpoint, that's the point I'm most fascinated with, is like, at some point, we're not going to be able to differentiate between, we're going to pass the Turing test, we're going to say, well, this sounds just like a human. But over and beyond that, the more interesting part is about, you could make the argument that they can become conscious because we don't know enough about our own consciousness to deny that it happens the same way as ours did, right? So that whole idea gets a full vetting right now in season 2. And that's, from a writing standpoint, that's what I'm most fascinated with. From a business standpoint, I don't love it that you can just pop in, write a David Ash script and out comes something that's probably better than what I have, right? I mean, I like it from a personal standpoint if I could do that, but I don't like it someone else could do.
Well, I had to learn from you first. So
right.
At least hopefully I'll give you credit.
Yeah. That part I hate, but the rest of the existentialist part of it, I'm really fascinated by.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, we're basically wet computers already.
Exactly. That's the whole point.
Right?
Yeah. That's exactly right.
Yeah. Yeah. What's interesting, a lot of folks, I don't know how we square this here, but they say that because the LLMs are pretty structured, right? And humans are prone to error, right? The error is what's going to, separate us from those LLMs. But if it's all deterministic,
exactly, yeah.
right? Like,
yeah, you got it.
Yeah. At what point does it even matter anymore?
You're on it. That's exactly where I'm at. Well, if you could, I'll send you a draft. Yeah.
There's a bar down the street. Maybe we can go over there.
You're just touching the tip of the iceberg there. Too.
Yeah. All right. Let's switch gears entirely.
Yeah.
What's your take on creating here locally? I know there's pros and cons, but like, what can we do as a community to be better?
Yeah, I mixed feelings about that too, because I have gotten some good help. I got the snow bait from our last feature film from the Minnesota Film Board. They were really nice about that and good. I know, I think you wrote it recently, the fact that they raised that so much, like $1 million or more, that was annoying, because that was around the time I was looking for some financial assistance for Incompleteness. And they're like, yeah, we love the concept, we like what you've done before, but if you don't have $1 million budget, we're not going to help you. I'm like, that's where the rubber meets the road in terms of like, are we really doing what we should be doing for the community? Because how would you build it up if you need $1 million to get there? Right. So I think I'm with you on that. I think that's kind of bullshit, honestly. If you really want to say that you're helping the film community, if you're going to say, well, we're just trying to bring Hollywood big shots in here, that's fine. Just leave it at that. Don't pretend that you're helping guys like you and me.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think they try to have it both ways, and they're figuring it out, and it's been a lot of hard work, and I applaud all the efforts, right?
For sure.
But you can't say on one side of your mouth that we're pro community and it's all about job creation, but then it's $1 million minimum, and then anybody that brings in out of state talent gets a 20% rebate.
Yeah. Exactly.
So conceptually, we could have a $10 million movie come in here, and 99.9% of cast and crew is out of state.
Right. What are you doing there? Because the money that you're using comes from the taxpayers that live here. Then why would you be giving it to somebody else? What's the whole point of that, right?
Yeah. And not even mentioned is that if we had a $10 million movie here, that sucks up basically all the crew, right? We couldn't have two things going simultaneously. The only way to get the infrastructure built up is to have a lot of little things going, right? And we all get better, and So I think it's always been kind of a short-term vision that they've had. We need to find a way to work together and do our 5 and 10 year dream plan together, I think. Yeah. Totally. Outside of the second season, what gets you excited creatively? Or are you just kind of focused, you're balancing enough as is?
Yeah, I mean, I'll have a short film project that'll pop in my brain once in a while, or something like that I'll want to do, and I don't have the time for it, unfortunately. So I'll make a note and I'll just store it away. But I mean, right now it's enough to try to just work 50, 60 hours a week, and I have 5 kids and everything else, and then to be doing a whole TV series on top of that's a little much. So I kind of, that's enough for me right now.
I think that's enough.
I don't need to start also do a feature film while I'm doing that.
Any other hobbies you gotta take up? Right.
Yeah.
No. Funny. Anything I'm not asking that you think would be?
No, these are all great questions. I mean, I think I feel like I only answered half of your question on the local film scene, because there's the administrative part of it, which we talked about. But I think, having made films here for 20 years, I think it is a great place to make films. Everyone's eager to work on stuff. The actors are fantastic because they all have usually a lot of theater experience. They're all professional and eager to work on stuff. You can do it on the cheap. I think it's much easier to do what we've done here than in Los Angeles, where you have to pay a bunch of people, crew, you got to find name cast and all that.
$5,000 for a parking lot.
$5,000 for a parking lot. Yeah, so I have nothing but positive things to say about actually working here. Anyone that you ask to use their location, they're always nice. They usually let you do it. I've never had much problem with that. So yeah, I mean, I think the environment for making films, once you have some financing and their script the way you want it to be, is great here. I think it's fantastic. The stuff with the film board and everything else, where it's called now in the government office, that hopefully will iron itself out. But that side, I think, maybe is the bigger challenge as far as that goes. But to actually do stuff here, I can't think of a better place to actually make stuff here.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I mean, that's why I'm still here.
Yeah.
I think, the amount of talent we have in this state is unparalleled, really.
Right.
I made a movie, in LA once, and half the crew was from the upper Midwest.
Okay.
Everybody historically left.
Right.
Right? Because for the job opportunities.
Right.
And, when you talk to producers in LA, when they're hiring, if you're from Minnesota or the upper Midwest, that's a huge star.
Yeah.
Because they know we have the work ethic and we're well educated and,
Right.
We're usually, cool enough to hang out with after, you wrap. So I think we have a great thing here. We just need to find the momentum and keep it going, and not let those, kids move away.
Right.
I mean, obviously there's probably benefit in that too, but you know what I mean? Let's build our own infrastructure here so we can keep things here, and I think the sky's the limit.
What's been your experience as a Minnesota filmmaker trying to sell your stuff outside of Minnesota?
Yeah, great question. I think as a writer, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
I think, good material rises to the top. Now, obviously, networking and all that does matter a little bit, but, both coasts are 3 hours away, so it's not like you can't take a meeting next week if you had to.
Right.
Or get reps to pay attention, and they can do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. I think from a writing perspective, it's a lot easier. As a director, you kind of have to do those meetings and you have to pitch, and it's so much easier to be, in the town where it's happening.
Right.
With that said, we've noticed over the last couple of years kind of like the decentralization of the industry.
Yep.
Right? The pillars of power used to be mostly LA and a little bit in New York, but now it's like you can set up shop in Atlanta and get plenty of work.
Right.
New Mexico is very much a thing. It was Louisiana before and still is a little bit, right? So I think, and then plus COVID kind of trained everybody to take virtuals.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Like you talk to anybody in LA, they're like, oh, I got to drive 3 hours across town to go audition or go do a pitch.
Right.
Now a lot of that can happen virtually. So I think that the powers that be are now trained to know that that's just a normal thing.
Right.
So it's even less important, I think, to be there. I think half of the reason to be there is to prove that you're serious, or at least that used to be the thing. Like, okay, this is not some flyby thing. We can count on this person because they made the sacrifice to do it, and or we can take advantage of them, But I think all that's changing before our eyes right now. So I think, I think we can make anything from anywhere, right? And now distribution is changing so dramatically too. Like I could make the argument that YouTube is the perfect platform for Incompleteness, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a whole host of reasons why not to do that, but we're moving in that direction, right?
Right.
So it's great to see like the power dynamics shifting. Where it ends, I don't really know.
Yeah.
But when there's these moments of chaos, right? That's where opportunity can be born. So I think those of us that are trying, pushing, doing things, I think will be well positioned to succeed.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe AI is writing and directing all our stuff here in a couple of years. So.
Yeah, just sent it to an AI director to immediately reject it before even.
That's right.
It's sent. It's like, nope.
Yeah.
Just read it. It sucks.
Yeah. You forgot to fill out the thing in the form, and okay, this person's out.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, that seems like a great place to stop.
Yeah.
If people wanted to follow along with Incompleteness or anything you have moving forward, where's a good place for them to go?
Well, Incompletenesstheseries.com is our relatively fully stocked website. That's probably the best place. We got the trailer on there, and if they want to get in touch with me, they can get in touch with me through the show. I don't know. That's one way to do it.
But any updates will be on the homepage probably.
Yeah, I think so. Once we sell it for $50 to $100 million to Netflix, then that'll be on the top.
Yeah.
There. I would take 50. I think actually you don't need 100. So we'll see. But
that feels reasonable.
Feels zero.
Yeah. All right. Well, I can't wait.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being here. This was awesome.
No, it's pretty fun. Appreciate it.